Om Bhadram Karne Vishnuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Stirairangaihi Stuštuvagam Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitayadayuhu Swasti Nahindro Vrittashravaha Swasti Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti Nastarkshyo Harishtanemihi Swasti no Brahaspatir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Very good. Welcome back. We continue our study of Amrita Bindu, Upanishad. And in our last class, we saw one of the, I think, one of the most succinct statements of profound truth that you'll find in any Vedanta scripture, perhaps in any scripture of any tradition. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha moksha yoho. Brilliant in its simplicity and in the profundity of its message. Manas eva, your mind alone, is the karanam, is the cause for bandha, bondage to suffering, and moksha, freedom from suffering. This is incredible in its implications, and it really is a good message. It's a good message because if the problem, a little philosophical, and I think we may have talked about this before, but just make this point before continuing. If the problem is real, our definition of real is that which is unchanging. So if the problem is real, there's no solution. If the problem of human suffering is a real problem, there is no solution to the problem. Real is that which exists in past, present, and future. That's our definition of real. Fortunately, I think we joked about the problem being psychosomatic, so to speak. It's all in your mind, as doctors sometimes say, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. It's all in your mind. In this case, it is all in your mind. Suffering is a matter of how you respond to situations in the world. I think in the last class I gave the Fruit Loops example. So look at that. The child responds to the absence of her box of Fruit Loops with such agony over a box of breakfast cereal. You, on the other hand, if you go to the same cabinet for your favorite breakfast cereal and it's not present, it's not a big deal. Do you get the point? It's all a matter of how we respond to different situations. And these teachings of Vedanta, teachings we find in this Upanishad, have the capacity to elevate your vision, your drishti, your understanding of your true nature to such an extent where everything in life becomes like Fruit Loops. Imagine having your car stolen. Not fun. Your car is stolen. Yeah, okay. It's just like Fruit Loops. Your house burns down, or as some people sadly underwent today, their houses were blown apart by a tornado. Fruit Loops. This is real. You're diagnosed with terminal cancer. Fruit Loops. Sounds pretty bad. The vision of Vedanta is what? Fruit Loops. Actually, before we get to the text, I remember my guru, Puja Swami Tadatmananda, saying, everything is like, and he was looking for a word, everything is like fluff, like popcorn. I don't think he likes popcorn. That's okay. Everything is like fluff. Everything is like popcorn. Everything, meaning everything is unimportant. Nothing has the capacity to make you more full than you already are. Nothing has the capacity to rob you of your fullness. This is the vision of Vedanta. That's what we mean by Fruit Loops or popcorn. And that's what's expressed here. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. As long as you have the drishti, the point of view of the child towards the Fruit Loops, you have signed up for a life of suffering without remission, uninterrupted suffering. But when you come to have the adult perspective on the breakfast cereal, then everything is like Fruit Loops, meaning inconsequential. Okay, with that introduction, we will pick up the thread. How to gain this vision, how to gain this mukti, this freedom, this inner freedom. And we'll see that in the third verse as we continue. Yato nirvishayasya, yato nirvishayasya, manaso muktirishyate, manaso muktir, ato nirvishayam nityam, ato nirvishayam, manah karyam mumukshuna, manah karyam. Yataha nirvishayasya asya manasaha muktihi yashyate. Asya manasaha, for a mind, manas, for a mind which is nirvishaya, which is free from, literally free from objects. We're going to talk about this for a few minutes. Excuse me. For a mind that is nirvishaya, free from objects, muktihi yashyate. There is such a thing as mukti, as liberation, as freedom. Or we could paraphrase, when your mind is free from objects. I'm paraphrasing. When your mind is free from objects, then you have achieved a state of mukti, liberation, freedom from suffering. Liberation we use in a sense of freedom from suffering. Now, a mind free from objects, nirvishayasya manasaha, for a mind free from objects. What do you mean by a mind free from objects? Well, there are several situations in which your mind is free from objects. One of which is deep sleep. When you sleep soundly, your mind is utterly free from objects. This verse says, for a mind freed from objects, there is mukti, freedom from suffering. Well, in deep sleep, when your mind is utterly silent, do you suffer? In fact, we enjoy that sleep. There's the total absence of any kind of suffering in deep sleep. So, from that perspective, the statement is right. Nirvishayasya manasaha, for a mind which is freed from objects, as it is in deep sleep, muktihi. There is liberation, there is freedom from suffering. So if you want to be completely free from suffering, what should you do? On a more serious note, some of you may know that a common symptom of deep depression is sleeping a lot. Why do you think that might be? A person who's depressed is suffering. They're struggling with problems. And at least in sleep, they gain some relief from their problems. So, sleep is an escape. Deep sleep is definitely escape. But unfortunately, it's only a temporary mistake, because every morning you wake up, whether you want to or not. Even on weekends, when you don't have to wake up, you still wake up. And when you wake up, whatever problems that were there when you went to bed, the problems are still there when you wake up. So obviously deep sleep is not a permanent problem, is not the ultimate way to gain mukti, freedom, liberation, or freedom from suffering. There's another kind of nirvishaya state for the mind. There's another condition in which the mind is freed from objects. And that's in certain forms of meditation, when the mind achieves a state of absorption known as laya or samadhi. They're all synonyms. So when the mind is deeply absorbed in the state of laya or samadhi, the mind can truly become utterly free from any vrittis, any particular mental objects. Mind can be nirvishaya, freed from objects and samadhi. So when your mind is deeply absorbed in a state of samadhi, whether you've had this experience or not, do you think there's any suffering in that state of samadhi? Certainly not. So in the absence of any... Suffering requires thoughts, does it not? It's just a funny observation. You have to... I have a vague memory of my guru going on and on and on about this in some context. He says, in order to suffer, you really have to work at it. Your mind has to be engaged. And he says that we do it pretty well. We get our minds in. Let's give a concrete example. A friend says something a little casually to you that doesn't sound right. And you just say, nothing. You try to ignore it. Then you go home. And then that whatever your friend said, it comes back. What did she mean by that? And then you go on thinking, and then you start to come up with, you start to imagine, she probably meant this. How could she think such a thing? And you get yourself worked up into a state of agitation, anger, frustration, whatever it is. So in this sense, your mind has to be active in order to suffer. In deep sleep, your mind is utterly inactive. There's no suffering. In a state of laya or samadhi, you're not asleep, but your mind is absorbed in such a way where there's no activity, there's no change. You're awake, but the mind is as though frozen in an unchanging condition, at least for the time being. And in that unchanging condition of laya or samadhi, there's no opportunity for the mind to create suffering. So in that condition of laya or samadhi, there's mukti, there is freedom from suffering. But tell me, is this the long-term solution to the problem of suffering? As long as you're meditating, as long as you're absorbed in meditation, you're okay. And as soon as you come out of meditation, then what? Just like sleep. You have some problems, you go to sleep. You wake up, the problems are still there. Similarly, you sit and meditate. When you come out of meditation, whatever problems were there beforehand are there afterwards. So this is a temporary solution. There are some interpretations of Yoga Sutra that have it that Kaivalya is a term that Patanjali uses for moksha. Instead of using the term moksha, he uses the term Kaivalya. And there are some interpretations of Patanjali's Kaivalya, which means a permanent state of absorption, permanent samadhi. Is permanent, suppose you could go into the state of laya and not come out. What would be the consequences? First of all, if you go into that state of laya and you don't come out, any suffering? None whatsoever. None for you. If there's anyone related to you, however, they'll see you as being in a state of coma, and before long, if there's no food or water, your body will die. For you, there's no suffering. But obviously, it's not a condition in which we can sustain our bodies and minds. So, permanent samadhi is also not a solution. Then, is there a condition where the mind can be nirvishaya, free from objects, and have mukti, have liberation, freedom from suffering as a result, but a more reasonable solution than permanent samadhi or trying to stay in deep sleep all the time? The Vedantic solution, which we discussed before, is when everything is like Fruit Loops, when everything is inconsequential, functionally, the mind is nirvishaya. Now, this has to do with how we understand the term nirvishaya. Literally, it means without object. But maybe we need to interpret that a little bit more. Without objects that are capable of causing suffering. Because that's our concern, right? If there are objects that don't cause suffering, do we care about them? Of course not. Let them be there. If they don't cause suffering, then it's not an issue at all. So suppose we redefine nirvishaya a little bit more clearly, a little bit more distinctly, as a mind free from objects that can cause suffering. Nirvishaya, manas. A mind freed from objects that can cause suffering. Again, objects that don't cause suffering, what's the problem? We only want to be free from the sources of suffering. What kinds of objects cause suffering? Now, remember, we're not talking about external objects. We're talking about internal objects. The problem, it says, the prior verse says, Mana eva manushyanam. Mana eva says your mind is a cause of suffering and a solution. It does not say your mother-in-law or your boss or your neighbor is a source of suffering and freedom from suffering. The problem is absolutely in your mind. So when we're talking about vishaya here, object, we're talking about mental objects, not physical objects. So what kinds of mental objects cause suffering? And we discussed that at some length in a prior class. We said binding desires, attachment. Any thought that is a binding desire, as we said, was a desire whose non-fulfillment makes you suffer, makes you unhappy, makes you feel a sense of loss or lack or incompleteness. So the presence of any such desire, binding desire, those are the objects that cause suffering. So now we can get a very different meaning from this. Nirvishayasya manasaha, for a mind freed from objects, mental objects that cause suffering, like binding desire, like attachment. And there we have the meaning. For a mind freed from binding desire and attachment, muktihi ishyate. There is freedom from suffering. Yataha, now we have to connect this with the next line. Yataha, because a mind freed from attachment and binding desire gains liberation, ataha, therefore, you see the connection between the two lines, yataha, because you gain liberation when your mind is free from attachment and binding desire. Ataha, therefore, nirvishayam nityam manaha karyam mumukshuna. Therefore, manaha karyam, your mind should be made, manas karyam, the mind should be made nirvishayam, free from objects, nityam, continually. Your mind should continually be made free from objects. Continually means it won't work in deep sleep. Continually means it won't work in samadhi. Continually means you can to remove permanently and completely any kind of attachment or binding desire from your mind. Mumukshuna. This is to be done by a mumukshu. A mumukshu is one who seeks mukti, moksha, freedom from suffering. So mumukshuna, by one who seeks freedom from suffering, what should that person do? Make your mind continually free from attachment and desire. How? We discussed that briefly before. We're going to be discussing it quite a bit more, as we noted in a prior class. You cannot become free from attachment and desire by removing the external objects. And we gave the tea example. If you stop drinking tea, you don't stop wanting tea. The desire for tea remains. That attachment, that dependence on tea remains. What we did, we went through, I get confused because we're dealing with a very similar topic in the Bhagavad Gita class, and I get them confused. And I know you don't all attend necessarily. Most of you attend the Gita class, but I know some of you don't. I may get the classes confused. Not may, I do get the classes confused, what I teach in each class. So excuse me if I do that. The point is that you will never be free from all these desires until you find the true source of contentment, the true source of peace, joy, happiness, love, until you find the true self, Satchidananda Atma, until you recognize your own innate fullness, your innate perfection. Only, and I'm careful about using the words like only and always. If you know my teaching style, I'm very careful when I use those words. And here we can say it. The only way you will be utterly free from all desire and attachment, the only way will be in the discovery of your true fullness, your innate perfection, yourself as Satchidananda Atma. That discovery involves de-identifying, I don't think that's in the dictionary, but it should be. To identify, to disidentify, there we go, better word. To disidentify with your body, mind, and senses, etc., and to recognize that who you truly are is that unborn, unchanging, conscious being, that consciousness behind the mind and senses. I think that, we'll get into this more in the next verse, so I won't go further on that. So the solution to the problem then, mumukshuna, for anyone who seeks freedom from suffering, what is the solution to make your mind continually free? Not of all objects, but of those mental objects capable of causing suffering, which means freedom from those binding desires from attachment. A final comment here before we move on. So often we think the solution to our problems in life is the removal of the problem. Sounds silly when I put it in these terms. If you're suffering and the cause of the suffering is A, B, or C, then the solution is to remove A, B, or C and you'll be free from suffering. The problem in life is A, B, and C are not going away. You're stuck with them. A is your mother-in-law, B is your boss, C is your obnoxious neighbor. You're stuck with them. But it's so common that we conclude, in order for me to be happy, I have to get rid of A, B, and C. When A, B, and C are gone, then I'll be happy. If you're lucky enough to get rid of A, B, and C, which you probably maybe get rid of one or two of them, usually not all three. But suppose you're lucky enough to get rid of A, B, and C. By the time you do so, you now have D, E, and F to deal with. You get the point. Let's admit it. It is silly and naive and childish if we think that we can solve all the problems in our life, remove all the nasty bits of life, so we can enjoy perfect contentment and peace. This is childish. It's a fantasy. The solution is not in getting rid of the problems for the sake of happiness. The solution is discovering how you can be content in spite of the problems, in the presence of the problems. This is Vedanta. This is just maturity. This is basic human wisdom. As I said, to imagine we're going to get rid of all of our problems is childish and naive. To strive to reach a condition where we are not disturbed by the problems in our life. This is real, and this is the Vedantic solution. So the solution then is not to remove all the problems, but rather to discover that you are okay in spite of the problems. That you are fundamentally unaffected by the problems. That's very Vedantic. We'll see that more in the next verse. We'll proceed. Nirasta Vishaya Sangam, Nirasta Vishaya Sannirudham Manohridi, Sannirudham Yada Yat Yatmano Bhavam, Yada Yat Yatmano Tada Tat Paramam Param, Tada Tat Param. Talking about the mind, manas. Nirasta Vishaya Asangam, Manaha, manas. When the mind, manas, is nirasta Vishaya Asangam, when the mind is in a condition where nirasta, it has been cast off. What has been cast off? Vishaya Asangam. Asangam means asaktihi, attachment. Attachment to what? Vishaya, objects. So when attachment to objects, Vishaya Asangam, when that attachment is nirasta, removed, for that mind, the mind for which all attachment has been removed. Obviously a reference to the prior verse. But in the prior verse, we gave three interpretations of nirvishaya. Pretty clear which of the three is referred to in this verse. So this verse makes it very clear. A mind which is free from vishaya asangam. A mind which is free from attachment. Not a mind freed from all thoughts in deep sleep. Not a mind in a state of arrest in laya or samadhi, but a mind which is, that's an important point, a mind that is fully engaged in all worldly activities, shrinking from none. That is, not avoiding the nasty bits, as I said a few minutes ago, but a mind that can be fully engaged in all the complexity and difficulty and challenge of worldly life, but nirasta vishaya asangam, that mind which is utterly free from attachment, dependence, which means a mind engaged in worldly affairs without demanding that situations should be in this manner or that manner, in a manner suitable for me. This is very fundamental to unenlightened human thinking, and that is, we enter into a situation and we judge it. Is this situation good for me or not so good for me? Will I be comfortable in this situation or will I be uncomfortable in this situation? If I'm comfortable in that situation, then there's attachment because I want to be in that situation and I want it to continue and I don't want it to end. If I'm uncomfortable in that situation, I want to get out or I want to change the situation to make it okay for me. This is normal human behavior. But normal human behavior creates an incredible amount of suffering. Suppose you were in a situation, by the way, this isn't some kind of fantasy we're talking about here. This is simple, basic wisdom. You're thinking, come on, Swamiji, any situation we're in is either going to be beneficial to our well-being or harmful to our well-being. We're going to like it or not like it. It's inevitable we're going to make some kind of judgment about it. It's good or bad. It's nice or it's unpleasant. What? When you discover that your inner fullness is utterly unaffected by any aspect of a situation, then the situation becomes neither good nor bad. The situation becomes a fact. And facts are neither good nor bad. Facts are neither desirable or undesirable. The ratio of the diameter to the circumference of a circle happens to be 3.14. Is that good or bad? It's not good or bad, it's just a fact. There are tornadoes in Texas. Fact. Somebody just won the lottery. Just a fact. You can imagine how elated such a person would be. $100 million or whatever absurd number it is. Imagine winning $100 million. Just a fact, like 3.14. And Vedantically, that's absolutely true, because this inner fullness is so full, the only mathematical word we can use for it is infinity. Tell me, what is infinity plus 100 million? In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says so beautifully, it's just like all of the rivers flowing into the ocean, and the level of the ocean doesn't rise one iota. Think of these massive rivers, the Mississippi, the Amazon, the Ganga, and all of this water is flowing into the oceans. Doesn't affect the oceans at all. The vastness of the oceans is such that they're utterly unaffected by this unbelievable amount of water entering into them. This is the fullness of one's true nature. Therefore, winning $100 million lottery becomes a fact. Being diagnosed with terminal cancer becomes a fact. Not good, not bad. They become facts. This is real. This isn't some kind of philosophy we're talking about. This is a radical shift of one's worldview, of the way you see yourself and the world around you. So this is the mind, the manas, which is nirasta vishaya asangam, that mind, which is freed from all attachment. How did that mind ever get to be like that? How does a mind get to be like that? And here we see some guidance. For that mind which is sanniruddham, that mind which is restrained, controlled. Restrained or controlled. To restrain or control the mind means to place the mind someplace. When you restrain, to restrain your mind means instead of running all over the place, you pull it back. You pull it back where? Instead of running around out there, you pull it back in here. In here means where? This verse says, Hridi, in the Hrit, in the heart. When the manas, mind, is sanniruddham, restrained, hridi, in the heart, when the mind is, I'll paraphrase, when the mind is placed in the heart. Now here, hrit can have several meanings. Sometimes hrit means buddhi. That's not so here. Often hrit can mean buddhi, intellect. Here, hrit, heart, means the core of your being. The heart, the essence of your being. And the essence of your being happens to be Satchidananda Atma, consciousness. So to restrain your mind in the heart, manasaniruddham hridi, to restrain your mind in your heart means to turn your mind towards your heart, to direct your mind towards the truth of who you are, which is Shuddha Chaitanya, pure consciousness. This is the discovery that needs to be made. Your mind is turned towards your true self, Satchidananda Atma, for the sake of discovering that you're not this body, you're not this mind, you're not associated with these senses. You indeed are this consciousness by which all mental events are known. For that discovery to be made, how will you make that discovery? Not as long as your mind is wandering all over the place. When your mind is sanniruddham, by the way, the prefix sam, completely, niruddha, in fact, two prefixes, sam, ni, and rud. Rud is the root, which means to stop. Literally, it means to stop. Rud, rodhate, stop. So it has two prefixes. One is sam, meaning completely. The other is ni, which means certainly, certainty, with certainty. So, sam, completely, ni, with certainty, restrained. Doesn't sound halfway at all. That's a very strong statement. When the mind is completely redirected towards your true self. Now, these are just 3 words. These 3 words have a lot of meaning. What does that mean, to have your mind completely redirected towards your true self? Well, before we answer the question, consider how your mind is usually oriented. Your mind is usually oriented out there, looking out into the world, seeking whatever will make you content and avoiding whatever will make you discontent. That is the normal condition of the mind. Normal condition of the mind, which, as we observed before, leads to endless suffering. So suppose we take that normal extrovert mind, that mind looking for all the goodies out there in the world, that mind trying to anticipate the problems out there and avoiding the problem. Suppose we take that mind and completely redirect its attention so that instead of being focused on the world, it's focused on your true self. It's turned within. And turned within, not merely in the sense of an inward-turned experience. Usually we're experiencing things out there in the world. If we restrain our mind and turn it within, we can have some kind of inner experience. But experience in and of itself is not a solution to this problem. The reason experience cannot be a solution to any problem is experiences come and go. Is there any such thing as a permanent experience? Even permanent happiness. Do you think enlightenment is a condition of permanent happiness? An enlightened person walks around with a huge grin on her face all the time, smiling, no matter what. Enlightened person is told, your dear friend just died. And the grin continues. Absolutely silly. There's no permanent happiness for an enlightened person. There's no permanent experience for any such person. Experience cannot be the solution to any problem because experience by its very nature is transient. Then what is the value of any experience at all? The value is that we can learn from experience. If we have experiences and don't learn from them, like when we make mistakes and we don't learn from our mistakes, what good is that? But suppose we learn from each and every experience, and we try. We're all intelligent, mature people. We try to learn from our experiences. And from all of our experiences in life, we've learned a lot. But now suppose we can create some rather unique experiences through meditation. And by the way, in a few more verses, we're going to be talking about meditation in this text. Suppose we can create some unique experiences through meditation. Those meditative experiences, in and of themselves, don't change anything because they come and go. Even in the most profound nirvikalpa samadhi, when it's over, it's over. It's gone. So no matter how profound the experience is, it comes to an end. And just as you get up after a good night's sleep, you emerge from nirvikalpa samadhi and you're the same person. Unless we learn from that experience. And from meditative experiences, a lot can be learned. Even from not so meditative experiences, a lot can be learned. And especially from an experience in which your manas is sanniruddham hridi. An experience in which your mind is redirected from external activities and instead it is turned towards your true self as a conscious being. The word conscious being doesn't begin to do justice to what your true nature is. A being which is unborn, uncreated. Consciousness which is unchanging and boundaryless. Those two words, conscious being, are good words. Conscious, chit, being, sat. Those are good words, sat, chit. But to really get the meaning, we have to fill that in. So a conscious being, unborn, uncreated, unchanging, boundaryless, limitless. That consciousness. When your mind is turned towards that consciousness, you have an opportunity to discover, I am that consciousness. And that is the discovery that allows your mind to be utterly freed from all attachment. Again, just imagine, to go back to that ocean metaphor, imagine discovering an ocean of fullness within. Just to use that metaphor from the Bhagavad Gita. You discover an ocean of fullness within. Having discovered that ocean of fullness within, the $100 million lottery is just a fact. The diagnosis of terminal cancer is just a fact. This is the discovery that utterly changes your worldview. All right. Nirasta Vishaya Sangam, a mind freed from all attachment. Why? Sanniruddham manohridi, because that mind has been redirected towards the true self, Satchidananda Atma. Yada, when your mind has been redirected towards the true self, ayati atmanaha bhavam. Ayati, one reaches, one gains, atmanaha bhavam, your own state. Atmanaha, one's own, bhavam, state. Atmanaha can mean your own. Atmanaha can also mean Satchidananda Atmanaha. One reaches the bhavam, the state that is Sat Chit Ananda. That is not mere consciousness, but consciousness unborn, uncreated, unchanging, boundaryless, limitless. One attains, ayati, one gains, one reaches that, let's use that metaphor, one reaches that ocean of fullness. Atmanaha bhavam. What is Atma bhavam? What is the state of Atma? Ocean of fullness. One reaches that ocean of fullness. Tada, then, tat paramam param. Then you have reached the ultimate goal. The paramam param, the ultimate goal, the supreme goal, if we want to use the word supreme, that ultimate goal, tat paramam param, you reach that supreme goal when? When you rest in your true self, when you discover that ocean of fullness within, when you discover your innate perfection. This text, by the way, is going to take a turn in a couple more verses. We'll start talking about Brahman, and so far we're focused on Atma, the true self. But here we're getting a little hint of where the text is going. By turning your attention within, by redirecting your mind towards the true self, you discover not merely that ocean of fullness within, but you also discover tat paramam param, you discover the ultimate goal of all, the ultimate reality of all, which we, in Sanskrit, we call Brahman. Very odd to think of discovering the reality because of which everything exists, the reality because of which the cosmos exists, is discovered how? By turning your attention within. We'll come back to that, but that's what's being expressed here in this verse. Okay. All right, let's see just a little more. Tavadeva nirodhavyam, tavadeva nirodha, yavadhririgatam kshayam, yavadhririgatam etat jnanam cha dhyanam cha, etat jnanam cha dhyanam, shesho nyayascha vistaraha, shesho nyayascha vistaraha. Good. This verse actually nicely concludes our discussion. Tavat eva nirodhavyam. We used that word before, sannirudham, that restraint or redirecting of the mind. And you might wonder, well, how long do I have to do that? How strongly should I do that? When should I do that? How much should I do that? And that's what this verse is answering. Tavad eva nirodhavyam. You should control your mind, or let me paraphrase, you should redirect. Nirodhavyam doesn't literally mean redirect, but contextually. That's what we're talking about. Not just restraining the mind, but directing its attention towards the true self. So therefore, I'll paraphrase it. To what extent should you redirect your attention? And tavat eva nirodhavyam, paraphrasing, to what extent should you redirect the attention of your mind? To what extent? It's answered, yavat hridi gatam kshayam. Yavat, to the extent that, and the word that's not mentioned here, of course, is manas, mind. So you should redirect your mind to the extent that manas, your mind, kshayam gatam, literally, to the extent that your mind resolves. Kshayam gatam means to resolve. Your mind resolves where? Hridi. For our Sanskrit students, there's a nice sandhi here. Hridi becoming dhridi. Hridi, hrit, heart. All right. So you should redirect your mind. You should focus your attention within to the extent that your mind, kshayam gatam, your mind resolves hridi, into the heart, into consciousness. Your mind resolves into consciousness. Now, this is referring to perhaps two different things. One is a meditative experience, without question. A kind of samadhi in which your ahankara, your ego, fades away, other thoughts are gone, and you find that there is no longer thinker and object of thought. You find that there's only consciousness. This is a particular meditative experience. Normal experience is you find yourself, I am the observer, and this is observed. I am the observer, these papers are observed. I am the observer, my thoughts are observed. My perceptions are observed. My emotions are observed. But suppose there's nothing to observe. If there's nothing to observe, are you an observer? If there's nothing to observe, the status of observer goes away. All that remains is consciousness. This is a kind of meditative experience, laya or samadhi, in which the mind resolves in consciousness. So there are two interpretations there. Both of them are important. So one is a meditative experience, but what did we say about experience a few moments ago? It's not the mere experience that we're after, because experiences, as we observed, are transient. What we're after is an meditative experience that we can learn from, because knowledge transforms permanently. Once ignorance is destroyed, done. And the ignorance we're trying to destroy is ignorance about the true self. So one meaning of this, to have your mind resolve in consciousness, one meaning is a meditative experience of laya, of samadhi, of absorption. And from that experience, we can better understand our true nature as Satchidananda Atma. Second meaning, for the mind to resolve in consciousness. From our other sessions, when we discussed the nature of thoughts, remember we had some discussion about pratibimba vada and avacheda vada. I don't want to go back through all the details. But in that discussion, especially with regard to avacheda vada, we said that thoughts are nothing but consciousness with a form superimposed on them. Right now your mind is full of thoughts. What are those thoughts made of? Right now in your mind is a Swami Tadatmananda thought. What is that Swami Tadatmananda thought made of? This Swami Tadatmananda is made of fat. The Swami Tadatmananda thought in your mind is not made of fat or flesh or bone. That thought has as its content consciousness, chaitanyam, consciousness. So this is a second way of understanding this expression. For your mind to resolve in consciousness, that's literally what it says. Hridi gatam kshayam. Your manas, mind, kshayam gatam, gets resolved, hridi, in the hrit, in the heart, in consciousness. So one meaning of your mind resolving in consciousness, as we said, is a meditative experience of absorption. Hopefully we can learn from that. And the second meaning is your mind resolving in consciousness is to understand your mind is nothing but consciousness. In fact, there is nothing but consciousness. Prajnanam Brahma, one of the 4 Mahavakyas. Everything is consciousness. Prajnanam Brahma. So this kind of resolution where you realize that this, let's be less abstract, be more focused on the present moment. The experience you're having right now is nothing but consciousness. The only thing present right now is consciousness, with a lot of details. But the details are really not other things. It's like the pot being superimposed on the clay. The pot is not a second thing superimposed on the clay. Clay is the thing. Pot is merely a form. It's not a second thing. In the same way, in this experience, consciousness is the thing. All the details are forms which are incidental, forms which add nothing to the content, which is consciousness. So this is a second way of understanding a mind resolving in consciousness. Pretty profound stuff. Etad jnanam. This is wisdom. This is Vedantic wisdom. This is Atma Jnanam. This is self-knowledge. This is the discovery of that ocean of fullness within. This is the discovery of the true self, which is utterly unaffected by anything that can happen to you in life. This is the discovery that allows everything else in the world to be like Fruit Loops. This is the discovery that allows the mind to be nirvishaya, utterly free from attachment, from dependence, from desire. This isn't anything ordinary. This resolution of the mind and consciousness, both the meditative experience of the mind undergoing resolution, and perhaps even more importantly, the recognition that the mind is nothing but consciousness. This is a recognition, etad jnanam. This is the Vedantic wisdom that is to be sought. Dhyanam cha. And this is true meditation. This is what meditation is meant for. Meditation is not merely meant to quiet your mind. Meditation is not merely for nowadays stress management. Good. Stress management is very good because there's a lot of stress. It needs to be managed. Meditation is a great way to manage that stress, but that's not the goal. Etad jnanam, dhyanam cha. This is self-knowledge, this is true wisdom, and this is meditation. This is what meditation is meant for. I like the way this line ends. Sheshaha nyayaha cha vistaraha. Sheshaha, everything else, is vistaraha nyayaha. All of it is just a loose English translation would be everything else is just more and more blabbering. If you were writing in English, that's how you'd write. Everything else is mere blabber. The literal meaning is vistaraha, an expanse of nyaya, logic, reasoning. Everything else is just mental cogitation, just a lot of useless inquiries, a lot of useless cogitation, like worry. Worry is a useless cogitation. So sheshaha, anything else, is just meaningless blabber. But anything else, sheshaha here, is referring specifically to spiritual practice. The goal of spiritual practice, etad jnanam, dhyanam cha. The goal of spiritual practice is gaining this knowledge, etad jnanam, and gaining this meditation, dhyanam cha. Sheshaha, everything else, is blabber in the sense that it's not the main thing. If what you want is freedom from suffering, this is a little, we'll go with this. If what you want is freedom from suffering, how many pujas should you do? How many Satyanarayan kathas should you attend? How much upavas, fasting, should you undergo? How much money should you put in the hundi? That's the point being made by this text. Other spiritual practices have their place. Absolutely have their place. But this text, prior verse said mumukshuna, 2 verses ago. Mumukshuna, by one who seeks freedom from suffering. For one who seeks freedom from suffering, pujas are not going to do it. Satyanarayan kathas, putting money in the hundi, fasting, whatever it is, it's not. All of it can help. All of it does help. But for the mumukshu, for the seeker of liberation, the only solution, again, be careful with this word only, for the mumukshu, one who seeks freedom from suffering, the only solution, etat jnanam, dhyanam cha, the only solution is this knowledge, this wisdom, together with the meditation, which helps you gain this wisdom. This is the goal. So this verse ends with a very nice way. Anything else is irrelevant. We can paraphrase it. The real thing is gaining this knowledge with the help of this meditation. It's a good place to stop for tonight. When we meet next time, I mentioned the topic of Brahman coming. So we will make that segue from this Atma Vichara, from self-inquiry, to understanding Brahman. So we'll make that transition in the next class. We'll conclude with our prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.